In this video, we're going to talk about motivation. So what motivates you, for example, to watch this lecture video? When we talk about motivating factors, we talk about extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is when a person is motivated to perform an activity or to behave in some way in order to earn a reward or avoid punishment. So this might be a trophy for playing well in a soccer game, versus intrinsic motivation, which is when a person is motivated to perform this activity for its own sake or for personal rewards. So maybe you're extrinsically motivated to watch this video to earn a better score on your quiz that's coming up, or maybe you're intrinsically motivated. You just want to gain knowledge and you're excited about this pursuit of knowledge. It's likely that there's a combination of both. So with extrinsic, you're earning a reward or avoiding punishment, and for intrinsic, it's for personal reward. One note about the interaction between these two is that we have something called the overjustification effect. This is observed when we apply extrinsic motivation, we often will see intrinsic motivation decrease. So if you're a painter and you're passionate about painting, you're intrinsically motivated to paint, but then we start paying you to paint, we see that this is going to reduce your intrinsic motivation to continue painting. So this is called the overjustification effect. There are 4 different qualities of motivational factors that we can describe. First, the factor needs to be energizing or stimulating. It needs to activate a behavior. For example, if you're going to go running on a cold morning, you need to be motivated by a desire to achieve fitness. Second, the motivating factor has to be directive. That is, it has to guide a behavior to satisfy a goal. So a behavioral example might be eating food, and that motivating factor is going to be hunger, which is going to drive you to seek and eat food. A third quality of a motivational factor that we talk about is persistence. So the factor has to persist or continue until the goal is achieved. So with the example of eating, you will keep eating while the hunger remains. And so this motivational factor is persistent. And fourth, we talk about the strength of the motivational factor. This is how motivating the factor is. So we might see a kale salad might differ from a Hattie B's spicy chicken sandwich in the size of the reward. You might be more likely to eat a tasty fried chicken sandwich compared to a healthy salad. Now, in psychology, we talk about motivational frameworks, and these are ways to organize or categorize what motivates an individual. So psychologists have proposed many different motivational frameworks. We'll talk about 2 in this video. One is drive theory, and the other is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So first, let's talk about drive theory. With drive theory, we see that drives are reduced by meeting needs, and that leads to behavior. So let's draw out what this looks like. If we have a need, and that need is food, we have a need for food, that need for food is driven by our hunger, and that is going to lead to a behavior of eating. So when we provide food, we're reducing the drive of hunger, and that behavior eating is what drives this process. So let's copy this and look at a few other examples. So here our need would be oxygen, the drive being you want to stop suffocating, and that's going to elicit the behavior of breathing. If we talk about thirst as a drive, the need being water to quench your thirst, that's going to elicit the output of a behavior of drinking. Let's talk through another example. Maybe you're laying in bed one night dreaming about a nice Whopper from Burger King, and your hunger is driving this dream. You wake up and you're hungry. Well, as your hunger increases, your motivation, the drive to go get food is going to increase. So if you wake up and you're a little bit hungry, you're probably not going to get out of bed to go get food. But if you wake up and you're really hungry, you're probably going to go get food. So this drive to find food is correlated with an increase in your arousal, and this is going to increase the likelihood that you're going to go get the food. So if we see that this behavior consistently reduces a drive, and you're doing this many nights a week, you're waking up and you're going to get food, we say that this behavior becomes a habit. This habit is defined as your dominant response that's produced by arousal. When we look at the resulting behavior, we say that that behavior's likelihood is determined by the drive, how strong of a drive is present, and by the habit, how much of a habit has been formed by the individual. So on your own, I want you to work through an example. So think of somebody walking through Overton Park to get to campus on a hot summer day, maybe to get to work or to a class. What's the need if the person is feeling very hot and sweaty? What's the drive? What's the behavior? And how might a habit emerge in this scenario? So this is drive theory, which is one way that we can describe how motivational factors lead to a behavior. Next, we're going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a second example of a motivational framework. This was proposed by psychologist Abraham Maslow in 1943. And so the overall message of this framework is that a person must satisfy their most basic needs before satisfying other needs at higher levels that are not as important or critical for survival. So we draw this hierarchy as a pyramid, with the most basic needs, the needs we need most for survival, at the base of the pyramid. So here at the very bottom of our pyramid, we have our physiological needs. These are the absolute essential things we need to survive, like food, water, shelter, and warmth. Then, as we move up the pyramid, we get higher level needs. So according to this framework, the next need that we need to satisfy is the need for security. And this is for safety, our own safety, our employment, and financial security. Then above that, we have our social needs. These are needs for family, friendship, intimacy, and belonging. Above that, we have our need for esteem. This is a need to satisfy our self-worth, our sense of accomplishment, and our confidence. And at the top of our pyramid, we have our need for self-actualization. This is our need for inner fulfillment. So we need to meet these needs at the bottom before we can move up to a need above that. So our physiological needs need to be met before our security, before our social, before our esteem. Maslow's hierarchy seems to generally fit the relative priorities of these needs under typical circumstances. But there are some issues with this hierarchy. One is that the hierarchy is not empirically supported, but it is used a lot in education and business, and that's why we cover it in this class. You might see this in your careers in the future. Also, sometimes we see that people don't behave as this hierarchy predicts. Can you think of an example of when someone might behave in a way where they're sacrificing a lower basic need in order to satisfy a need that's higher up in this hierarchy? We'll work through a few examples in class about this. This was just a brief introduction to motivation and motivational factors, and we'll dig into this a bit more in class.